name is Krystle and this is my daughter Emmy. She is 11 months old today, and I'm going to talk about our breastfeeding journey. When I was 20 weeks pregnant, I found out that Emmy had Down syndrome and congenital heart disease. She's my only girl. She has 5 older brothers, and this news was really hard to take, obviously. I was told that babies with Down syndrome often have trouble, challenges with feeding. Her cardiologist even brought up what the plan would be if she wasn't gaining weight. And so even with all of this knowledge, even though I knew what everyone was telling me that it would be a challenge, I was like, I'm still going to breastfeed her because I breastfed all of my other babies. Looking back at that time, I would say that I was determined, but more than anything, I was naive, and I didn't actually know how challenging this would be for us. She was born on September 1st, about 2 weeks before my due date. She came into the world really fast. Within 20 minutes of us arriving at the hospital, she was born. I was only able to hold her for about 2 minutes before the nurses took her to the NICU. Her initial APGAR score was an 8, and then a few minutes later it was a 9. And during my pregnancy, I had been told that as long as she was not in distress, then I would be able to hold her for that first golden hour. Unfortunately, they didn't uphold that, and she was only taken 2 minutes after she was born. As soon as the umbilical cord stopped pulsing, assessed her and said that she needed to go to the NICU. I was really thankful that everything had happened so fast because I didn't have time to get an epidural, which means I was able to get up and start walking around really quickly. And because I had pretty much preserved most of my energy, I was able to go and be with her about 40 minutes after she was born. While I was getting ready to go, and they had her in the NICU without us, they were checking on her blood sugars and stuff like that, and of course, because I hadn't had a chance to latch her yet, she had very low blood sugar. So instead of asking us what we would like to do, they started IV fluids. Really unfortunate because we could have latched her or even done the glucose paste or something, given a formula, something to give her something besides just going straight to IV fluids, because once she was on the IV fluids, then they were elected to take her off, and that meant that she was just going to have to stay in the NICU longer than just the initial testing. I kind of stayed on top of the doctors, asking them what we could do to wean her off. It still took a few days, so to wean her down. And the first latch was a little rough whenever I joined her in the NICU, but she actually started doing better throughout the week. I had been able to pump. I had been able to pump, so she got some really good colostrum for that first feed. I put her skin to skin and gave her colostrum through a bottle. I also asked the nurses about finger feeding or using an SNS system or something along those lines so that we could get milk into her, because unfortunately before my milk came in, I wasn't getting very much colostrum after that initial pumping, and so I was trying to figure out what else we could do to get calories in her so that she didn't have to stay on IV fluids. So I was told no for all of those things, and I asked about donor breast milk, and that was a no also because they reserve that for preemies, which I understood. So basically, she was born the day before Labor Day, and it was a Sunday, and there was just no help because the lactation consultants weren't there, and speech and OT weren't there either. So I kind of felt alone because I didn't have any help in that area, and the nurses and doctors that we had on our team at that time weren't really concerned on how to get her food through her mouth instead of on IV fluids. So she was born on Sunday. On Wednesday, my milk finally came in, and we got a new team. We were put in a different section of the NICU, given a new doctor. And this doctor was a very big proponent of breastfeeding. So she came in and helped change our plan and made sure OT got in there and lactation as quickly as possible. She changed our our whole experience there. She made sure that I could have a room to stay with Emmy because they had already discharged me from the mother-baby unit. So we got a private room in the NICU, and there was also a hurricane coming, so they wouldn't give me an extra room anywhere else. So I was really grateful that she secured that for us. The occupational therapist helped us work on bottle skills, as well as modified SNS system and finger feeding. And then Emmy actually developed jaundice. We were able to get her off the IV fluids, but then she developed jaundice. And so we had to stay a little longer so she could be under the blue lights. And the lactation helped me get a better latch for her and to use the nipple shield, and just, helped me with my technique, because even though I had nursed 5 other babies, every baby is different, and mamas still need help with breastfeeding, and I had never breastfed a baby with such high needs before, or such special needs before. I was really grateful to have those people in the hospital to help me. Being in the NICU with her was one of the hardest experiences for me. It made me question my mothering skills. It made me question myself a lot because I felt like I didn't have any control over her care, and I was trying to juggle all of the things and make sure that the milk was being brought on time, and that was the other thing. Once I was pumping and giving them milk, I had to ask for my milk back in order to give her a bottle, and sometimes I was told it wasn't time yet, even though I could clearly see that she was hungry. So that was very frustrating to have to go by whatever they were saying. And in my experience, I have always nursed my babies on demand and been there, whenever they needed to nurse. It was frustrating to be told no and to be told, oh, it's not time yet, when I could see what my baby needed. There was even a time whenever a nurse brought us formula and said it was breast milk, and then my husband had to correct her and say, no, this is not breast milk. And she argued with him, and he was like, listen, we're not new parents, we know what we're doing, and this is not breast milk. So there's just some things, in the NICU that were really hard. And I do appreciate the fact that they were there to take care of her if there was an emergency. The NICU is a good place for sick babies. Finally, we were able to come home, which was both scary and exciting. It was up to us then to watch and see how she did. Our at-home feeding routine was very time-consuming, and I had little time or energy for anything else. Every 2 hours, I would nurse her, and then I would pump. The first week at home, it seemed to go well, but then at 2 weeks old, she started to have more heart failure symptoms. So then it was hard for her to stay awake to nurse, and she she was struggling. Her heart was working too hard, so she wasn't getting enough calories, and we had to keep going in for weight checks and to see if, you know, all of the things that we were trying were working. It's hard to get her to have a good latch because of her low muscle tone and her energy. Once we realized that she wasn't gaining weight, we changed our routine and started finger feeding her. And this would still take a long time because nursing took a really long time, and then finger feeding took a long time. So basically, once I would get done with the routine, I would have just a few moments to rest or eat or take a shower and take care of myself, and then I would have to start the whole routine again. I had many pumping mishaps and just feeling like a zombie the whole time because I was so tired. And then on top of that, I was taking her to occupational therapy to try to get her strength up so that she could be a more efficient nurser. She was born at 8 pounds 1 ounce, and then when we left the hospital, she was about 6.5 pounds. Being home, we did the frequent weight checks because we knew that surgery was going to be needed for her heart. We were trying to get her to gain weight. Whenever we would go to the pediatrician, they would do a weighted feed sometimes if she was able to nurse there. But I was really disheartened to see that with all the things I was doing, she just wasn't gaining weight. And we started fortifying breast milk with formula. When I would pump, I would add formula and then would feed it to her that way. And all of those things, it wasn't working. So by the time she was a month old, she still hadn't gotten back up to her birth weight. She was admitted to the hospital. When we were at the hospital, the doctors placed an NG tube, and that's the one that goes through your nose and straight down into her stomach.